Brier Island is on the southwest coast of Nova Scotia, at the end of a long narrow peninsula called the Digby Neck, requiring 2 ferry rides to gain access. Rugged and small Brier Island was settled in 1769 and was the childhood home of Sir Joshua Slocum, a famous sea captain and first man to sail around the world alone. He did this in 1895 to 1898. Life on the island is dominated by the sea, seen here on a calm day. Brier is separated from Long Island by the Grand Passage, named by Samuel de Champlain in 1604 after one of his 29 trips across the Atlantic. On this unusually warm, sunny day without much wind, the waters look abnormally calm. A very high breakwater protects the few fishing boats that can harbor here, along with a Canadian Coast Guard vessel stationed here full-time. The south end of Brier Island is covered by stubby white spruce with a few balsam firs, leading to a large bay bordered by the mile-long Pond Cove beach with water on both sides. The forested area leads us to a large raised heath on the southern point of Brier Island. Offshore to the south of the southern point, we see several offshore exposed reefs. These reefs are partially submerged extensions of the North Mountain Basalt Formation, leading down the western coast of Nova Scotia from Cape Split, far to the north. The basalt formations continue to the south and decline for a long distance offshore. A few visible portions rise above the sea surface as exposed reefs, as the formation extends south before finally disappearing. Large volumes of water from the Bay of Fundy, with the world's highest tides, flow between and around these exposed reefs with very strong current flows every 6 hours. A fair amount of gravel is evident on these reefs, together with large amounts of rockweed. The gravel is a function of hundreds of years of wave action. There are several reefs in the distance, miles to the south, with strong current flow between each. These reefs were very hard to see and uncharted in the early days of navigation. History records some 35 sailing ships lost on or near Brier Island. Where species of rockwood are present on these reefs, there is a thriving living community of plants and animals in the intertidal zone. Sandy areas here are a reminder that the sea bottom of the shallow continental shelf, far out into the Atlantic, is largely sand. Some of this sand was deposited when sea levels were higher because land areas were once lower under the weight of glaciers. A large shallow bay enclosed by 2 points of land dominates the southern end of the island, with a long cobble beach enclosing a very large open water wetland. This bay is open to the south and southwest prevailing wind, so this is not a frequent harbor of refuge. The Grand Passage Channel at Westport has several anchorages. However, currents during tide changes anywhere on the island are very strong, making any anchorage a risk. The large pond behind the beach here is part of a valley between 2 ridges of North Mountain basalt, which continues below us south into the sea for miles. Many trees are dead or dying along the pond, signs of a brutal wind and too much moisture from a slowly sinking island. Tree damage and decay is seen most often on Nova Scotia and shallow south-facing shores. Freeport on Long Island and the Grand Passage can be seen in the distance. Looking east on the far horizon, we can see mainland Nova Scotia across St. Mary's Bay. Trees on the eastern ridge, north of Brier's southern heath, look affected by the prevailing wind, with many damaged or shaped by very strong winds from the south and southwest. Some of these trees are dead. As we turn south over the heath, one can see the exposed layers of North Mountain basalt sloping out to sea to the south, and several of the exposed reefs. A little further north we find a coastal bog, or heath with few trees of any height, and a long view over St. Mary's Bay to the Nova Scotia mainland to the east. This rectangular heath may once have been cleared and a cultivated field in the distant past. The basalt layers form rock beaches into the sea, providing essential protection for the island. Another view of Brier's Forest, on the eastern ridge, closer to Westport, shows a mix of spruce and a few deciduous trees, with several narrow bogs or heath sloping down toward the shoreline. Brier Island's bogs are one of only 2 known locations on Earth of eastern mountain avens, a yellow flower similar to buttercup. This rare avens is found in only 2 places, here in Big Meadow Bog, a raised bog, and in the snowfields of Mount Washington, New Hampshire. The Big Meadow Bog hosts species from both the Atlantic coastal plain and from much colder Arctic, alpine, and boreal landscapes. Rare here are the extremely rare eastern mountain avens, a rare dwarf birch, and curly grass fern. Climate here replicates an alpine climate for the avens. Big Meadow Bog is also home to a variety of sedges, grasses, lichens, and flowering plants like blue flag iris, goldenrod, and meadowsweet. Few people live on Brier Island outside of the small town of Westport. The strait between Westport and Freeport looks relatively calm today, but every 6 hours this strait has a 15-knot current that makes ferry and boat operation challenging. The Freeport side of Grand Passage, on Long Island, is similar to Brier Island, but has a unique feature: man-of-war rock.